More than 100 days have passed since Nancy Guthrie disappeared, and despite all the attention this case has received, one question continues to grow louder with every passing week. If law enforcement has been investigating for months, why are private investigators reportedly becoming involved now? Is there information that has not yet surfaced publicly? Could a fresh set of eyes uncover something investigators have already reviewed countless times? And perhaps the most important question of all, when a case reaches this stage, who truly has the greater ability to find answers, private investigators or law enforcement? Those questions have become central to the discussion surrounding Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. They are questions being asked not only by followers of the case, but by families across the country who have watched this investigation unfold day after day without the answers everyone desperately wants. When people hear the words, private investigator, many immediately picture television shows. They imagine someone sitting in an unmarked vehicle across the street from a suspect's house, camera in hand, uncovering critical evidence that somehow escaped the attention of police. Reality is usually far less dramatic. And understanding that reality may help explain what could be happening behind the scenes in the Nancy Guthrie investigation. Picture a quiet neighborhood before sunrise. A few porch lights remain on. A parked vehicle sits motionless in a driveway. Trees sway gently in the darkness. To anyone passing through, it looks like an ordinary morning. Yet somewhere within a setting that appeared completely normal, something happened that changed a family's life forever. Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Since then, investigators have spent months trying to answer a series of difficult questions. What happened? Who was responsible? Where is Nancy? And perhaps most importantly, what piece of information has not yet been discovered? Cases like this are often far more complicated than the public realizes. Many people assume investigations move in a straight line. A crime occurs, investigators identify a suspect, evidence is collected, and an arrest follows. In reality, investigations rarely work that way. Instead, detectives often find themselves staring at hundreds of pieces of information that may or may not be connected. Imagine a large conference table covered with maps, photographs, interview notes, surveillance stills, and pages of reports. Every document contains information. Some of it proves valuable. Some of it leads nowhere. The challenge is determining which pieces matter. According to investigators, every lead must be examined. Every statement must be evaluated. Every timeline must be tested against available evidence. That process takes time. And time creates challenges of its own. Witnesses forget details. Surveillance footage can disappear. Memories become less precise. People move away. Circumstances change. Investigators understand this reality better than anyone. That is one reason why cases involving missing persons often require enormous amounts of patience. The public sees only small portions of an investigation. Behind the scenes, detectives may be conducting interviews, reviewing records, analyzing evidence, and pursuing leads that cannot be discussed publicly. But there was another problem. Families are forced to live through every day of uncertainty. Imagine waking up each morning and not knowing where your mother is. Imagine looking at a family photograph sitting on a living room shelf and realizing another day has passed without answers. Imagine celebrating birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings while carrying that uncertainty. For Nancy Guthrie's loved ones, this is not simply an investigation. It is their daily reality. That emotional burden often explains why families eventually seek additional resources. Not because they have given up on law enforcement. Not because they believe investigators are not working hard. But because they want every possible avenue explored. That is often where private investigators enter the picture. One of the biggest misconceptions surrounding private investigators is the belief that they possess powers similar to law enforcement. They do not. Police officers and detectives operate under legal authorities that private investigators simply do not have. Law enforcement can execute search warrants approved by courts. Law enforcement can obtain arrest warrants. Law enforcement can seize evidence. Law enforcement can access investigative databases unavailable to the public. Private investigators cannot do those things. They cannot force someone to answer questions. They cannot compel testimony. They cannot obtain search warrants. They cannot make arrests. Those powers belong exclusively to law enforcement and the courts. So if private investigators have fewer legal powers, why do families hire them? The answer often comes down to focus. Imagine a detective responsible for 50 active investigations. Some cases involve theft. Others involve assaults. Some involve fraud. Others involve missing persons. That detective may be working multiple cases simultaneously. Now imagine a private investigator hired to focus on one case and one case only. Nancy Guthrie. Every day begins with the same objective. Review information. Follow leads. Examine timelines. Contact witnesses. Search for anything that may have been overlooked. That level of focus can sometimes create opportunities. Not because law enforcement failed. Not because anyone was careless. But because investigations are conducted by human beings. Human beings can overlook details. Human beings can interpret information differently. A fresh perspective occasionally reveals something important. That happens in medicine. It happens in engineering. It happens in business. And it happens in criminal investigations. What would you do if someone you loved disappeared? Would you rely on one avenue of investigation? Or would you pursue every available resource? Most families choose the second option. And it is difficult to blame them. When answers remain elusive, every possibility becomes worth exploring. That was not the only question people began asking. Could private investigators actually discover information that law enforcement missed? The honest answer is yes. It happens. But not necessarily for the reasons people imagine. Many viewers assume a private investigator discovers something because they are better than police. That is usually not the case. More often, discoveries occur because someone looked at information differently. Consider a witness interview. A detective may ask one set of questions. Months later, a private investigator may ask another set of questions. The witness provides additional details. Not because they were hiding information. Not because investigators were incompetent. Simply because memory works in unexpected ways. People remember things differently over time. A small detail suddenly becomes significant. A forgotten observation returns. A vehicle parked near a house months earlier suddenly seems important. Investigations often move forward through those small developments. There is another factor people rarely discuss. Some witnesses feel more comfortable speaking with private investigators. That does not mean law enforcement did anything wrong. Human nature is complicated. Some individuals feel intimidated speaking with police. Others may fear becoming involved in an investigation. Some may simply feel more relaxed speaking with someone outside official law enforcement. When that happens, information can surface. And information creates leads. Leads create opportunities. Opportunities create progress. Of course, any information developed by a private investigator must still be verified. Suppose an investigator uncovers information suggesting a particular person deserves additional scrutiny. That information alone is not enough. Law enforcement must evaluate it. Evidence must support it. Facts must confirm it. Investigations cannot operate on assumptions. They must operate on proof. That standard exists for a reason. The consequences of being wrong are enormous. A person's reputation can be damaged. Families can suffer additional pain. Resources can be wasted pursuing inaccurate information. That is why professional investigators focus on evidence rather than speculation. And in a case receiving national attention, that responsibility becomes even more important. Throughout the months since Nancy disappeared, countless theories have circulated online. Some people believe they know exactly what happened. Others remain convinced a specific scenario explains everything. But experienced investigators understand something important. Theories are not evidence. Opinions are not evidence. Assumptions are not evidence. Evidence stands on its own. And until investigators possess enough evidence to explain what happened, questions remain. Picture a surveillance camera mounted above a convenience store entrance. Every day, hundreds of people walk past without attracting attention. Now imagine investigators reviewing hours of footage searching for a single clue. One person. One vehicle. One moment. That is the reality of investigative work. Hours of effort often produce very little. But occasionally, one detail changes everything. That possibility continues driving investigations forward. As Nancy Guthrie's case moved beyond 100 days, another reality became clear. People had not forgotten. People had not forgotten. Look at the discussions surrounding the case. Look at the comments. Look at the continued interest from people across the country. Many followers never met Nancy. Yet they continue paying attention. Why? Because something about this case resonates deeply. People see their own mothers. Their own grandmothers. Their own neighbors. Their own loved ones. An elderly woman disappears, and suddenly countless families imagine how devastating that situation would be. That emotional connection helps explain why attention remains focused on this investigation. Attention matters. Public awareness matters. Cases sometimes move forward because someone recognizes a face. Someone remembers a conversation. Someone finally decides to share information. History has shown that important breakthroughs can emerge from unexpected places. One witness. One tip. One overlooked detail. One piece of evidence. Everything can change. And that possibility remains at the heart of the Nancy Guthrie investigation today. Investigators continue searching. Questions remain unanswered. The family continues waiting. And somewhere among the evidence, timelines, interviews, and leads, there may still be a missing piece capable of explaining exactly what happened. That is why people continue watching. That is why investigators continue working. And that is why this case continues drawing attention long after the initial headlines faded. Thanks for watching. Follow for more.